Nextlight tonight, and the project that Vicki just mentioned that we refer to as the AV Solar Ranch 1 project. I'd like to acknowledge Vicki and the rest of the executive committee tonight. We've had a very productive meeting with them in December. We very much appreciate being invited to present on their agenda tonight. Let me introduce the AV Solar Ranch 1 team. Bonnie Hayes, who's sitting right here, is with Hayes Consulting. She is handling community affairs in the Antelope Valley. Alex Martin is our intrepid information technology guy, so he's running the computer tonight. Roy Skinner, who is standing back here, handles permitting and environmental issues for the project. And Jack Piggott, raising his hand, is our Director of Photovoltaic Development at Nextlight Renewable Power. He's also the project manager for the Antelope Solar Ranch 1 project, and he's going to be making a presentation tonight about Nextlight and also about AV Solar Ranch 1. We're going to try to have a short Q&A session after the presentation. We know our time's fairly limited. We want to honor that because we know you have a busy agenda. We're going to stick around in case there are questions after the presentation. We can take those outside so we don't interrupt the meeting. We're very committed to making this a two-way street. We're going to give you some information tonight, but we want your feedback as well. That was one of the good things about meeting with the executive committee. We've got a lot of very good questions. We've incorporated them into our thinking about this project, so we want to hear from you. There are going to be additional public participation opportunities as we get into the permitting phase of this project. We will give you notice of that, so there are going to be opportunities to get out and express your opinion if you want to do that. I also want to direct you to the AV Solar Ranch 1 project website, which just went up on the web today at 3 o'clock, so that's another good source of information about the project. It's another way to communicate with us by email. As I said, we're very committed to getting back to you, so if you communicate with us that way, we will respond to you. We would like you to check it out. I spent a lot of time on that, and we're pretty proud of it. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jack, and then we'll have Q&A after the presentation.
All right, well, thank you very much for coming tonight to listen to us talk. I know you've got other things on your agenda, so we'll try to keep it short. Can you hear me back by that heater? All right. Next slide, please. What we're going to talk about are really two things. I wanted to tell you who we are, Nextlight Renewable Power, and to tell you about the project. So let's go to the next slide. Nextlight Renewable Power. We're a renewable development company. We focus on the solar projects. We do photovoltaic projects like this one, and we also do solar thermal projects. And I'd be happy to explain the difference to anyone who would like to know after this session. We're based in San Francisco. We also have an office in Pasadena. We're made up of very experienced project developers. We've done other types of projects. Many of us have 25 years of experience, and we know that one of the most important things is to get known in the community and tell them what you want to do and get feedback. And that's why we're here tonight. This is just the beginning of the process, and so very happy that there's a big turnout. Nextlight is owned by Energy Capital Partners. That's a private equity fund that's made up of university endowments and retirement funds. The largest investor is CalSTRS, which is the California Teachers Retirement Fund. So that's who we are. We're well funded. We're backed by very reputable next slide. The project itself, I think many of you may know where the Larson Ranch is. We just continue out west on 138 Avenue D, and we're at the corner of Avenue D and 170th. Part of the project is to the south. Most of it is to the north of Avenue D. And there it is right there. Next slide. And this is what it is. It's 230 megawatts of photovoltaic modules. These are very similar to, in fact, they're exactly the same as a photovoltaic panel that you would put on your house. And you can see right here that that's what they are. They're mounted on these things which track, follow the sun. They start in the east, and as the sun goes overhead, they track to the west, and those are called trackers. So we're on the project that's photovoltaic. It's mounted on single-axis tracking modules and on single-axis trackers, and that's essentially what they are. This is the module. This assembly is the tracker. This bar here is what drives it from east to west. There's a half horsepower electric motor here that drives about 70 of these trackers. It doesn't really use much power. It just generates it. The way it works is the sun hits the PV panels. They convert the photons into electrons, to electricity. That's DC current. Runs along electric wires that are also along this bar. When it reaches the end, they're buried and go underground. They all go to a common inverter. And we're on the project that's photovoltaic. It's mounted on single-axis tracking modules and on single-axis trackers, and that's essentially what they are. This is the module. This assembly is the tracker. This bar here is what drives it from east to west. There's a half horsepower electric motor here that drives about 70 of these trackers. It doesn't really use much power. It just generates it. The way it works is the sun hits the PV panels. They convert the photons into electrons, to electricity. That's DC current. Runs along electric wires that are also along this bar. When it reaches the end, they're buried and go underground. They all go to a common inverter. And what an inverter does is it takes DC electricity and converts it to AC, and then it steps it up to a voltage that would be similar to what you would have along, maybe along the street here, distribution lines. And those would all go to a substation, or stepped up again to a transmission level voltage, and it goes to the grid. And so really that's all it is. It's very simple. We don't burn anything. We don't boil water. We don't have big towers. The highest point on these things are about 13 feet off the ground. So they're not visually intrusive. If you're off at a distance, you basically see right over them. We own the property now. We've purchased the Larson Ranch. The project will interconnect to the planned Whirlwind substation that Southern California Edison is building north. It's about 3.5 miles north along 170. Next slide. We started going to meetings with various groups in the community in September, and you can see the various groups that we've met with. We understand that dust control is a big issue out here. It can get quite windy, and that's something we're taking quite seriously. We are, to the extent we can, we're not going to disturb the vegetation that's out there, and we'll have water trucks and ways to mitigate that. We met with the Property Reserve. We met with Edwards Air Force Base. These panels don't reflect the light, and in fact there's a big installation at Nellis Air Force Base right now, and F-16's land, there's not a problem. This is the first meeting in a number of interactions we hope to have with the community. We're We plan to be filing our conditional use permit application in a few weeks, and there's a public process involved. Next slide.